Good morning, YouTubers. Been working on a project this week on the mathematics of us buying a plug-in hybrid electric car or buying just a battery electric vehicle next year. Currently, we own a Ford F-150 pickup truck, which we use for trailer towing occasionally, and some local pickup truck things, but otherwise we try to keep the miles off of it because it only averages 17.5 miles per gallon. But of critical importance here is it can do over 20 miles per gallon on the highway if you're traveling. And we own a Ford C-Max Energi, which is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and it's capable of 20 miles of electric only range, and it gets about 38 miles per gallon on the highway. So we're going to finish paying for the truck next year, about this time of year. So we're thinking of upgrading to a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle that has more range, like the 2020 Ford Escape, which is going to come out next spring, is going to have 30 miles of electric only range. And it would be a slightly larger vehicle, and it would be an upgrade for us. So I've been wondering, what are the numbers on this? That makes sense to me. I could still travel in the vehicle, and instead of currently 60% of our local driving is electric with the Ford C-Max, the Ford Escape plug-in hybrid electric would up that to 80%. And Toyota's coming out with a plug-in hybrid electric RAV4 in the next year also, and possibly it might even have more range. We don't know yet. So I was wondering what the numbers were. How would it come out? What would the numbers tell us to buy? Which would have the lowest cost? Which would have the lowest carbon footprint? So I spent a while crunching the numbers, and here's what I came up with. On the far right's a pickup truck, and then the second one over from it is the Ford C-Max Energi, and then the third column's for the Ford Escape plug-in hybrid electric, and then the last column on the far right is a hypothetical battery electric vehicle that is not a Tesla. Now, one of the problems with buying a battery electric vehicle that's not a Tesla, where we live in the desert Southwest, the charging infrastructure is kind of sketchy. So we really wouldn't be able to travel with it, probably, because well, if we wanted to go, we'd have to go to Albuquerque and then go towards Oklahoma to go points east, or go to El Paso and then go into West Texas to go to points east. And the charging infrastructure out there is not good for anything but a Tesla. And the same things with traveling to the west towards Arizona. So I was very startled when I got right down to it. Well, let me preface this remarks first. There's one other wrinkle to this, and that's El Paso Electric's now offering a special rate for electric vehicles, but you have to get a special demand meter, which costs $500. Now, it turns out that normally you'd be paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour, but with this special demand meter, you'd only be paying 5 cents a kilowatt hour for off-peak power. So it would reduce your costs substantially. As a matter of fact, it would have less than a 2-year payback under most circumstances. So I had to figure it out both ways. I had to figure it out both at the 12-cent rate and the 5-cent rate. So what we came up with here is that the Ford Escape plug-in hybrid electric would cost $877 a year at 12 cents a kilowatt hour, for the total of 15,000 miles, with 3,000 miles of that being traveling. And Of course, 80% of your local driving would be electric. And if you had the 5 cent a kilowatt hour rate, that would reduce the cost to $578 a year. Now that includes the gasoline. So that's why the figures don't quite match the 12-to-5 ratio that you might be thinking about. Now it turns out that the same thing, more or less, is roughly true. The battery electric vehicle for a year at 12 cents a kilowatt hour, it costs $852 versus the $877 I just quoted you. So that's a $25 savings per year, a couple dollars a month. And at the 5 cent rate, it would cost $574 versus the $578. So again, you'd be saving $4 a year. So there's nothing compelling here to make a choice on when it comes to the dollar cost for energy. Now it turns out that the lowest in carbon output is the Ford Escape with 1.44 tons of carbon emissions. And the battery electric vehicle, because I'd have to use the truck for traveling, would end up being 1.47 tons. So you just can't make the choice on the basis of those two facts. So really what would drive the choice is the impetus to not drive the truck and keep miles off the truck. In other words, you're buying a new vehicle and you've paid off this pickup truck, which only has 60,000 miles on it. So why rack up an extra 3,000 miles a year traveling in it when you don't have to if you make the correct vehicle choice? And you can't do that with a normal battery electric vehicle that's not a Tesla. So I'm leaning towards the plug-in hybrid choice, simply for that reason only, not the numbers, because they're a wash otherwise. So that got me to thinking, well, what about a Tesla? If I could afford a Tesla, and that's another big if. So I wrote a 2-page paper on it, which I've published on our electric vehicle organization Facebook page. It's called the EVO SNM, stands for Southern New Mexico. And I'll give you the long and short of this report, but at 117 miles per gallon with charging infrastructure and so forth, you'd be able to do all your local driving and traveling with a Tesla. So, and the long and the short of it is that, and you definitely would want to have the 5 cent rate. You wouldn't want to charge it at the 12 cent rate. The long and short of it is it would end up costing $305 a year for electricity for the Tesla to do 15,000 miles a year at 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And so that's a significant savings. Over the $578, it's $273 a year of cost savings for energy. So what you get down to is, well, if the payments are $273 a year higher, then it's a no-go. Or what if the payments weren't that much higher? Let's say they were only $100 higher, but however the insurance is $50 higher. And then you run into maintenance issues where you have to travel long distances to maybe Phoenix or someplace like that, or down to El Paso or Albuquerque or wherever you might have to travel to have service done. Now, obviously, electric cars don't need that much service, but what if you had a fender bender, for example? Then you'd be without a vehicle, and you don't have a local dealership that can help you out. So those kinds of issues, insurance, servicing the vehicle, especially any kind of accident or any kind of real mechanical problems that come up, and the lack of local dealerships, and the potential of having to pay, instead of $500-600 a month car payments, you might end up having to pay $700 a month car payments, just simply because the Tesla I want, which is a long range Model 3 with 310 miles of range, is going to cost in mid-40s to probably around $50,000. And so those are the choices I have. And we'll see what I can find. Maybe I can find a used Model 3 long range for $40,000. And then it's a go. As long as it has low miles, of course. So those are the things I've been trying to work out, and doing the math has really been an important step for me. It's made the decision making a lot clearer, and I recommend doing some of this kind of math before you make these kinds of decisions. Now, obviously, you have to make a lot of assumptions. You know, like $2.50 a gallon gasoline was an assumption I used. The 38 miles per gallon for the Ford Escape, 37 miles per gallon, excuse me. The 117 miles per gallon combined figure for the Model 3 and so forth. So also, I'm going to have to factor in getting a $500 meter, and I'm going to have to factor in getting another $500 level 2 charging EV SE, because the one I had for the Ford C-Max is toast. So I'm still, right now I'm back to charging at 120 volts, but that won't do with a Tesla or another BEV or another new vehicle. I'm going to have to step up my game, especially if I get that meter. So I hope this was useful to you. I think the new Toyota RAV4 could potentially be a very interesting vehicle if it's going to get 40 miles per gallon on the highway, especially, and if it has more than 30 miles of range. If it has 35 miles of range, let's say, then obviously it's a much better choice than the Ford Escape, depending on the price. But we're looking at $40,000 for a really spec'd out plug-in hybrid electric, you know, the ones with all the bells and whistles. So, and I don't know if Toyota will have this vehicle out in time for me to make the purchase. So, well, there you have it, folks. I think plug-in hybrid electrics are a really good choice for a lot of people. It can really get you into the driving electric game. For the same amount of battery resources that it takes to make one Tesla Model 3 with a 75 kilowatt hour battery in it, you can make 5 plug-in hybrid electrics with the 15 kilowatt hour battery in it. And so it makes a lot of sense in this as we transition into an all-electric drive automotive world. We're getting there, we're just not quite there yet. And I don't like the complications of hauling around a gasoline engine with you when you don't need it, except for 10% of the time, let's say, or 20% of the time. But on the other hand, it doesn't get that much wear and tear on it. Oil changes on our C-Max only come every 10,000 miles, and we have 42,000 miles on our C-Max right now. We probably only got about 22,000 miles on the engine. So, and a newer PHEV that would even do more electric range would, hell, I could put 100,000 miles on that vehicle and only have 20,000 miles on the engine. So I think it's a very viable alternative given the current state of the technology and the charging infrastructure. So I hope this information is useful to you, and take care, everybody, and we'll see you down the road. Bye-bye.